Before this YouTube channel was birthed, I had several conversations with friends and family about what the rental business is, the very famous Airbnb, how it works, whether it was profitable, and some of these conversations span back to before 2020. But of course, we all know what happened in 2020. We know what has happened with the hospitality industry as a whole. But how has that translated, and how does that, in fact, impact on the market today? Are there any negative effects that have trailed on from 2020 that are affecting the Airbnb business? Is it still profitable? And of course, there have been several reviews around Airbnb as a business. There are negative reviews around is the business still profitable? How tenants or short let stay bookers actually come to a property and don't agree to leave. There are quite several legal considerations to make when you start your Airbnb. But despite all of these reviews and all of these comments, Airbnb as a company continues to witness and experience significant growth in revenue and profit. But there are tricks to it. There are things to consider when you start your own Airbnb. And today we will be talking firsthand with a seasoned Airbnb host, has done this for several years, probably one of the biggest Airbnb business owners in Sheffield or in South Yorkshire in the UK. So let's have a chat with Mr. Derek. Right, and we have Derek here, and Derek is the portfolio manager, runs the Airbnb, one of the biggest Airbnbs in South Yorkshire, England. Derek, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so good to be on your channel. My name is Derek Odionyamfe, and I'm a portfolio manager of AVU Apartments. So I started a business where we buy or lease properties, which we use for short let accommodation, which some persons just call it Airbnb. So we get these properties, do them up really nicely, and advertise them and use them to provide accommodation for short let.
So some people that we speak to are worried that the Airbnb market is very saturated. That's quite a lot of people coming into the Airbnb business. What do you have to say about that? Is there any way to identify a specific part of that market that is untapped? What are your thoughts around that sort of thinking?
Yes, that is really what is happening. When I started my Airbnb journey in 2016, there were very little people. So my properties were getting booked 95%, sometimes 100%. I'm like, oh, they would ring me, hi Derek, can I stay? I'm like, I'm fully booked. And so I knew I needed more properties to accommodate the guest base that I have built. But now everybody's in it. I myself, I have trained many people as well. And you go to property meetings and everybody's like, I want to join property meeting for short let, for short accommodation, and nobody wants to do the normal tenant rentals. But while there is a huge influx of people providing Airbnbs, there's also a huge change of guests wanting to now use these short let accommodations. So, but the way people can now excel is to begin to identify the type of people who use short let and see which ones can I reach out to. And there's quite a lot. So there's a huge demand now in corporate guests. Okay. And that means you now have to tap in and see, where can I get corporate guests from? A lot of guests that the successful Airbnbers have are not the guests that you get on Airbnb. They are the guests that you build a relationship with. So you might have to approach institutions, companies, the universities, the council, companies, and try to build a relationship where you can provide accommodation that they need in that your area. So a high level of proactivity is needed, and yes, you will still be having the occupancy, because a lot of people are just depending on Airbnb, on booking.com. But when you narrow down and see, how can I get people? Another way too is building relationship with your guests who have come to stay with you. Your role there is to be a host. a host is not just to give them a place to sleep, but to make sure that they are catered for, and their objective of coming to your city or your area to stay, that they are meeting it. So you have to sort of build a relationship with them, get to know them. Why are they here? Are they going to come back? Do they have friends who might want to come back? Or what more can you do? And when you have such relationships, you might see that you have a lot more repeat guests than waiting on Airbnb, and that keeps you still profitable in the business. So yes, there are avenues to keep having guests and to keep your business profitable.
Yes, it has been a profitable business. Quite a lot of people have come into it. But what do you think from your own experience?
The short let industry, short let accommodation is quite a very big one, and it is still highly viable. The need for it is still very high because our society is getting even more smaller now, and there are a lot of migration, people moving from one country to another, and job workforces moving from a location to another. And because of the popularity of Airbnb, many people are now aware that they can get more value and space than the regular hotels. So therefore, they turn to short-let accommodation to fill that need. And so therefore, the need is still very, very much, and it is viable. So it's all about tapping into it and then positioning yourself to the sort of clients that would use your accommodations or Airbnb. Yes, so like many people, you get to the point in your life where there's a necessary need to begin to have more than your normal income.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you begin to think. And one way to think sometimes is to think of what you have where you are and to see how can I turn what I have. So I used to, as a migrant, I used to live in an accommodation, and I and my landlord, we had good relationship. I was managing for him. So at some point, I realized that my landlord had a lot of properties which he had tenants in. So I spoke to him once that can I not manage these properties for you? I have a management degree. I've been managing the tenants that you have in this your block all these years, and you didn't even know, but your rents were coming. And he said, Derek, I like you very much. I would have loved to, but there's a lady who is like my agent managing it. But I know you're a clever lad. Do you know that you can manage your own property? I said, Sal, I'm just a salary earner. I don't have as much money. He said, no, have you heard of Airbnb? I said, no, I haven't heard of Airbnb. He said, well, Airbnb allows you can get a property and list it, and people stay, and you earn double the money that we earn from tenants. I said, he now asked me, do you have some money? I can give you one of my properties. I can sell it to you for £60,000. I said, sir, I don't have £60,000. He said, no problem. I like you, Derek. Now, what you're going to do, you would have to rent a place. Okay? I said, but I have my house. I can't rent a place. He said, okay, you can rent out the room inside your house. Because then I was living in a 2-bedroom house. So I now said, really, how does it work? He said, okay, I'll come to your house and see you. He came to my house, came in, we looked around, he said, this is perfect. We went back to his car and we sat inside. And Sal took his phone, did some maths that you can rent that room for £25 a night or £30, and you can have people in this, that. I said, okay, but how do I know people will come? He opened Airbnb. That was my first time was seeing Airbnb. And he now showed me that you can list it. I said, okay. I said, okay. And I tried it. I had my first guest come round, a gentleman who was there for work for 1 week, and he paid good money. The next guest stayed for a whole month. Now, the payment from that guest covered all my overhead costs, my rent, my bills, everything. So I was living for free. I said, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable.
Oh my God.
I did that a month, 2 months. I said, no, I need to duplicate this effort quickly.
Absolutely.
And I'll try to go and get a house. I'll tell the agent, I want to do this. The agent says, no, we are not doing it. No, we are not doing it. So it took me a few months. Plus, I was busy. I was at work. It took a few months. And then I now got the first person who I said, okay, you can't do it. I have a 2-bedroom flat.
Okay.
So I spent some time, a week or two, furnished it, made it look good, attractive. I had the experience then from renting my room and building relationships.
Yeah.
So I put this 2-bedroom out. And this 2-bedroom, the rent was £550 back then. By the end of the month, the income that had come was about £1,800.
Wow.
So my rent is 550, my bill say another 150, council tax, everything was like 700. No, was about maybe 850 or 800. So I now had a profit of over 100%, more than 100%. I was like, whoa, this is good. The second month was good as well. And bear in mind, I was still living in my house. I was hosting somebody in there. And I was now doing this. So during my lunchtime at work, I will run down, clean up when the guest had gone.
Okay.
And I'll clean up and the next guest comes in. It was going well till my neighbors were not happy with what I was doing.
All right. So this is your neighbors in
the 2-bedroom flat.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, they were like, oh, too many people coming in, that they didn't like it, and that my landlord shouldn't have allowed it.
Right.
So they wrote to my landlord. My landlord got in touch with me and said that they are letting him know that the insurance for the whole estate will not allow it. So I have to stop. Right. So that was the end of the journey for me there. So I stayed back again, kept working, and the zeal was still burning in me. So after about a year, I reached back to my mentor who told me about it, and I said, this is where I am. I have done it. I love it, but I'm struggling to get properties. Can you use your network to get? So, okay, my boy, come along. And he introduced me to a landlord who said, oh, I'm doing up these 4 new flats. Can you, okay, take it on. And my mentor recommended me well. So I took it on, no ID checks, nothing, just recommendation that I am diligent and I know what I'm doing. So by the time I jumped on these 4 flats, in about 3 months, I was earning way more than I was earning at my work.
Wow.
I couldn't cope with the cleaning too, because sometimes you have 3 or 4 guests going out and they are, I couldn't do it. So I got a lady in and she was cleaning. After the 4th month, I said I have to leave my job because this is more profitable and I love it. I love the relationships that you can build with your guests, because these are normal people whom you interact with. And I think that was my drive. And I also had a drive for interior, for properties.
All right, okay.
So I brought those skills of relationship with people and property development and interior decoration, and it was doing well. So I had to leave my job and focus on that. And that was the beginning of the journey. I was acquiring more and then started to buy my own properties for the same purposes.
Wow.
And here we are now with a lot of properties under our portfolio.
Wow. How many properties would you say you have in your portfolio now?
I think they're over 60.
Wow.
Yeah, we have over 60 units in Sheffield, and then there are some in Bradford and in Leeds, which is with a partnership with some other ones. But the ones I solely manage are about 60, over 60.
You obviously started the Airbnb as a side hustle. You had a mentor, and we cannot speak enough about mentorship in this business. And I think you did talk about mentorship there. You also talked about scalability. Scaling up the business from starting with that room in your own accommodation to renting, and then moving on to bigger properties and having 60 plus now in your portfolio. So how would you say that mentorship helps, and how would you apply that mentorship in terms of scalability? How can people scale the process of owning a property? So maybe you had a mentor who made it easy for you, and maybe you had an extra room. But for someone who has nothing, who says they want to start up an Airbnb today, what would you recommend?
I always advise, some people say success leaves clues. It means that whatever you want to go into, there's already somebody doing it.
Right.
So instead of go through the hard way of figuring out all by yourself, like you said, jump onto a mentor. So your mentor can be anyone who has gotten to where you want to even get and beyond. So one thing that helped me is I had a mentor who was into properties, and he was doing the maths for me. He was helping me to buy the properties when I got to that stage. It helped, but a lot of my journey I kind of figured out along the way.
Right.
But a lot of people don't have to do that now. Just find somebody who can coach you, or you can maybe YouTube videos, read books, join groups.
Okay.
Because in the short-let accommodation, there are always groups where there's an association, and you can go in there, and people that are on the same journey can share ideas and information. So what that does to you is it helps you do things correctly. It helps you do things more efficiently. It helps you avoid mistakes or things that could be so catastrophic that they could ruin your property journey.
So I know you talk about having a good customer relationship. You talk about that with your, coming from your job and how you started, interacting with your guests. How important is that for repeat guests? How important is the reviews that you get on your Airbnb or any of the booking platforms? How important is that for success?
Reviews are a way to establish credibility, and for prospective guests and stayers to be able to identify and believe in you providing a good level of accommodation. But one very interesting thing about our sector is that some people think reviews have to do with how nice your place is, or or the quality and all that. No. With hospitality industry, which we are in, I've grown to learn that reviews are more about the experience that the guest has. And that experience starts from how you say hi when they're booked. It goes from how you welcome them. It goes from how you check on them during their stay. It goes from how you interact with them even after they have left. So when guests are leaving a review, in most cases, they are leaving a review sometimes about you, the host, not even about your property. They might just speak about how you are an amazing guest, how you host, how you interacted with them from booking, how you assisted them. So the bottom line is aim for good reviews, and aim for that genuinely by being a good host, by being hospitable. Go outside the box of just giving a key and somebody stays. Go to the level of, can I give him a lift from the train station? Can I give some recommendations to him during his stay to help him? And at the end of the day, that person feels looked after. That guest begins to feel a sense of being cared for, and if you reflect on his reviews, because you need reviews, especially when you are just starting this business.
So the next question I have is around some of the fears people have when they start an Airbnb, or about Airbnb in general. Are there any worries around people coming to your property and stealing? Are there any worries about damages? There have been comments and negative reviews around people possibly coming into the property and not agreeing to leave, or not, sustaining the payments as agreed. What are the fears, and how have you experienced any of these? How have you had to deal with any of these problems?
Right. Like every other business, Airbnb has its challenges, and the more experienced you are, or the more you are well mentored, you begin to understand how to deal with them. So in terms of people coming, the major challenge that you might face is the fact that people break your house rules. So your house rules are things that you've set, like no parties, no smoking, no pets. So humans, a lot of them, or some of them, are bound to not follow these rules. So it's how do you make sure that they follow these rules so that it doesn't affect your property or impact on it. So what to do is to make sure that your rules are well known to the guests before they come. So in preventing such issues, you have to try to prevent them before booking, after they've booked, and then during the stay.
Right.
So before booking, you have to make sure that your policies are well known and clearly written on the platform to say, we don't allow this, we don't allow this, we don't allow this. Now, after they've booked, a further way to inhibit it is to re-stress your rules and then also to charge what is called a security deposit.
All right. Okay.
So a security deposit is a fixed amount of money that you ask your guests to put down as a deposit in case of any house rule breakages, that you'll be able to tap into that to rectify it. Now, that deposit in most cases has a way of conditioning the mindset of the guest. A lot of them, because if someone wants to smoke and realize that I'm going to pay £200 just to light this cigarette, they wouldn't do it. So that inhibits a lot of them. And also take an ID. If you can take an ID so that they know that they're accountable, that their IDs are out there if there's any issues. Then the other thing is, now during their stay, how do you still make sure that they keep to those policies? So you have to involve technology. So I recommend that there's always a CCTV outside every listing. You can't put it inside. It has to be outside every property, which is monitored to show the motion of who is going in and who is coming out. What that helps you do, it helps you to see the number of people coming in, so that not more than the number of persons allowed coming, to avoid parties or gatherings happening. Another thing which we use is noise monitors. So noise monitors are small devices which stick on the ceiling, and what they do is they listen to the decibels of the sound, and you set it well. So once the guests are getting a bit louder than normal, it will alert you.
Okay.
And if their loudness continues for 5-10 minutes, it will alert them. Okay. So they are so intelligent that they can send a text message automatically to the guest, telling them that your noise is going a bit high.
That's good.
And if they don't correspond and the noise calms down, it starts to beep like an alarm. So it beeps on your phone, on the device in the property, and you can reach out to your guests and remind them what your house policies are. In many cases, they didn't realize that they were being a bit too loud, so they'll keep it out. But in a case where you've heard your noise monitor has gone off, and you check your cameras and you've seen that a few more people have come in, then you have to reach out to them, or even have to come to the property to also stop that from going any further. And then when they do check out as well, you make sure you yourself, if you're a housekeeper or if you have a housekeeper, that they do a proper check of all your items. Anything that is broken or there's a smell of cigarette, she should raise it up immediately so that you can communicate with the guest and encourage them to cover the cost to rectify whatever they have done. And with that, if you have a culture of that, you will find out that in most cases, it's not even up to 1% of these issues that come up. We have a lot of properties in our portfolio, and we deal with this maybe once a week.
Okay.
And that's because we have automated the systems and have our team members who are monitoring and checking on all this to make sure that the properties are used properly, and also that neighbors are not impacted by such disruptions, because we need to run the business in an ethical way that is also considerate of those living around.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And that takes us to the next question around the successes of having an Airbnb. So, what are the key considerations that people should have when they're trying to set up an Airbnb? And thinking about those considerations is thinking, how can they be successful with getting involved with Airbnb?
I think the fundamental thing is location.
Okay.
So location has to be the most important thing that you consider when choosing where you keep your property or your Airbnb. You want to get a location that would have traffic.
Okay.
In most cases, the city centers the closer you are to the city center, the higher your visibility. But however, that rule is not a constant. You can still get a property that is far from the city center, but again, like we said, location. What traffic will come in that location?
Okay.
So if you have some apartments close to Peak District
All right.
where there's the mountains and people go for a walk and they travel around, it's not a city, but there's a traffic for tourists who want to go there. So you have to choose your location strategically. Another thing to consider is what sort of guest are you expecting? If you're looking for budget guests, you might want to stay closer to where they might be and give them a property that suits their budget. Another thing to consider is your overhead cost. You don't want to go and take a property that the rent or mortgage is so high, and meanwhile in that area the Airbnb market has a cap to what you can pay. So if you do that, if you take a property with such a high rent, you might struggle to make a profit. So if time will permit, I just want to mention a bit of tip on communication, which I believe a lot of us will really appreciate.
Yeah, go for it. Why not?
So when you communicate with a guest, I figured out that there are 5 points of communications throughout the journey of your guest stay. So before a guest books, they might reach out to you and ask you some questions. It's good to be very hospitable and friendly when you respond to them. But let's say a guest has booked, immediately they have booked, reach out to them and thank them so much, immensely for choosing you, and that you are going to try your best to be an amazing host. So that's communication one. Then before they come or they check in, maybe a day before they check in or on that day, reach out and find out are they getting ready for their journey, and then maybe send the check-in instructions just to guide them on how to come to your place. If it's by a lockbox, you give all those details out. Then once your guest checks in, reach out and say, I'm glad that you checked in. If there's any other thing that you need, let me know. The next day, which is communication number 4 or communication number 3, reach out to your guest and find out, is there anything that they need? You can recommend some restaurants around, anything. And then the day before your guest checks out, which is communication number 4, reach out to them. Find out how their stay has been so far. Remind them of your checkout time. Find out if they need a late checkout or need to extend their stays. Any of that, they feel like you are aware of where they are in the timeline of their stay. And when they do go, that day or the next day, thank them so immensely. Thank them for looking after your place, for keeping it neat, for following the house rules. Now, when you've done all this chain of communication and do it well, not with high-sounding formal language, realize that these are human beings. They are just seeking somewhere to stay. So connect with them at their level. When you finish all that, you'll find that you would have built a relationship with that guest. When he leaves a review, he will focus more on that experience, and that's what this industry is about. The guest will focus on that experience and give you a 5-star review, which translates that other people, even before they book you, they are looking forward to meeting an amazing host because they've seen that track record of how you've hosted other guests. Well, the shortlet industry is still very viable. Before anyone goes into it, I'll recommend that they do their due diligence. Okay, do your search. Location matters. Work the numbers. Don't be too excited. Don't bring too much of your heart into the property because you might go with so much emotion. This is a fine house. I'm going to buy it or I'll rent it. And the rent is just high, but you don't do the maths. And you get into it, and when guests start coming and they are paying what they feel that area should be, and it doesn't work for you. Also, go into it with a passion to be a host, with a passion to provide amazing experience. Any way that you can just make hosts feel valued, it would help. The return on investment on that would spiral into more referrals, more recommendations, and people are coming back to stay with you. And then if your business is growing, you need to make sure that you have teams around you, a good workforce who will be able to support a growth. Because one mistake that some persons do is they get access, or someone calls you, I've got a block with 10 apartments, and you jump into it, but you don't have that capability on ground to do guest communication, to do good cleaning. And what that happens is it can lead to guests coming and giving you bad reviews or not wanting to come back.
Yeah.
And you might see that your business is no more having guests. So we need to go into with a passion to provide good hospitality services and properties for guests.
Thank you very much, Mr. Derek. We went today from talking about whether Airbnb was profitable to talking about some of the challenges and providing some of the key insights into how you can start your own Airbnb. So very broad and brilliant insights you provided today. So we almost have a masterclass right here. And so thank you very much again, Mr. Derek. Mr. Derek provides mentorship. If you want to reach out, there is a way you can provide time to try to mentor people who are in this region and interested in starting their own Airbnb business. Thank you very much. If you like this video, if you find it relevant, don't forget to like, share with your colleagues, your friends, put a comment in the comment section below, and don't forget to continue to show up.